She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't even sit down. She just stood there with her phone in her hand like it was proof and said the sentence that made my whole body go cold. I'm pregnant. For a second, my brain did what it always does, tries to turn emotion into a problem. Timeline, options, logistics, anything except the one thing she was actually asking for, me. Then she looked at me like she already knew my response before I gave it. And that's when she said the part that ended us. I didn't tell you to keep you. I told you because I'm done living in half-truths. I tried to speak. Nothing came out clean. Because what do you say when someone's holding your future and you realize you've been treating them like they're temporary? She slid an envelope onto the table and whispered, "I wrote this before I came because I knew you'd try to fix it with words." Then she turned toward the door. No drama, no last kiss, just one final line that hit harder than any headline. "If you love me, don't chase me. Show up." And when the door closed, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like consequences. I wasn't expecting it to happen on a day that looked that normal. No cameras, no headlines, no big moment. Just a quiet room, a phone on the table, and her standing there like she'd already decided what she was about to do and was only here to let me catch up. I've built rockets that come back from space and land like they meant to. I've stared at problems that could bankrupt a company in a week and still slept like it was just math. But the first time she said it, my brain didn't know where to put the words. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't perform. She just said it. I'm pregnant. And I swear to you, my heart did this weird thing where it tried to run forward and freeze at the same time. Like it wanted to say this changes everything, but didn't trust me to mean it. I remember blinking, like I'd missed the line in the conversation, like maybe I'd misheard her, like the sentence was too human for the life I'd been living. And then she looked at me, really looked, and I felt something I haven't felt around many people. Not fear of consequences, fear of truth. Because I knew, in that second, she wasn't just telling me she was pregnant. She was testing whether I could finally show up like a man, not a mission. I tried to speak, and nothing came out clean. My first instinct was to ask questions. Timeline, details, logistics. The exact kind of response that sounds responsible but feels emotionally absent. The part of me that tries to control uncertainty by turning it into a checklist. But she didn't want a checklist. She wanted me, the real me, the one I keep locked behind work and pressure, and it's complicated. And I could feel how tired she was of all of that. People think emotions hit you like a wave. Sometimes they hit you like silence. A silence so loud it makes you realize how much of your life has been noise just to avoid hearing yourself. I stood there trying to find the right reaction, and that's when I realized how much damage I've done by living like reactions can be engineered. She watched me, waiting, and I could see it in her face. This wasn't new to her. She'd been watching me hesitate for months, watching me half show up, watching me say things like soon and after this and once this launch is done, watching me act like love is something you schedule after you finish saving the world. And the part that hurts is, I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to survive my own life. But survival can still be selfish. And she was done paying the price for my coping mechanisms. I finally managed to say, "Okay, talk to me." And even that sounded like a negotiation, like I was granting time, like she needed permission. Her eyes flicked to my phone on the table, face down like I always keep it when I'm pretending I'm present. Then she said the sentence that snapped something inside me. "I'm not here to convince you." That's what made it real. Because if she was trying to convince me, I could have argued. I could have leaned on logic. I could have reassured her with words I didn't fully intend to live. But she wasn't trying to win. She was telling me what's true and letting truth decide what happens next. She said, "I found out. I sat with it. I waited for you to feel safe enough to be real with me, and you didn't." Then she smiled, barely. Not a happy smile, a tired one. The crazy part is, I already knew what you'd do. That hit like a punch I didn't see coming, because I thought I was hiding my patterns better than that. But you can't hide patterns from someone who's been loving you through them. You can only hide them from yourself. I felt my throat tighten, not because of pregnancy, because of what it meant. It meant consequences. It meant a future that wouldn't wait until I was done being busy. It meant I couldn't keep living as a man who only fully belongs to his mission and gives everyone else the leftovers. And in that moment, this is the part that scares me to admit, I realized I didn't know if I deserved her trust. Because I'd spent too long training people to accept my absence as normal, I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. And that's how I knew we were standing on the edge of something. Not the edge of love, the edge of whether love could survive me. I said, I want to do this right. The words sounded good, but she looked at me like she'd heard right before and watched it turn into later. Then she asked me quietly, what does right mean to you? And I didn't have an answer that wasn't embarrassing. Because right in my world means efficient, optimized, managed. But right in love means consistent, present, human. And I've never been consistent at anything that doesn't have a deadline. She stepped back, took a breath, and said, I didn't tell you because I wanted you to fix it. I told you because I'm done living in half-truths. Then she dropped the second bomb. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm asking you to be honest. My chest tightened again because honesty is the one thing I claim to respect more than anything and still avoid when it threatens my control. I asked, are you saying you're leaving? She nodded once. I'm saying I'm not going to raise a child in a relationship where silence is the default language. And I swear to you, my body reacted before my mind could. I felt heat behind my eyes, the kind I hate, the kind that makes you vulnerable in a way you can't rationalize. And I tried to hold it back like I always do, but she saw it. And she didn't soften. She didn't comfort me, because she's not my therapist. She's not my emotional caretaker. She's the woman I claimed to love and didn't protect with truth. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table. I wrote this before I came, she said, because I knew you'd try to talk me out of it, and I didn't want to get pulled back into hope. Hope. That word sounded like a bruise. She slid the envelope toward me, and for a second I didn't touch it, because touching it meant accepting that this was real. Then she said, almost like an afterthought, and before you ask, yes, it's yours. That's when the tears actually came. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet crack inside my face that I couldn't stop. Because it wasn't just the idea of being a father again. It was the moment I realized that the person who loved me enough to carry my future didn't trust me enough to stay. Do you know how humiliating that is? Not public humiliation, private humiliation. The kind that happens when you finally see yourself clearly and you don't like what you see. I whispered, please don't go. And she paused at the door, not because she was tempted, because she wanted to make sure she wasn't walking away from a man who was finally learning something. She turned and said, I'm not leaving to punish you. I'm leaving to protect what's left of me. Then she said the sentence I'll probably remember forever. If you love me, don't chase me with words. Follow me with consistency. And then she walked out. No slam, no speech, just a door closing with the softest sound, and my whole life suddenly feeling too big and too empty at the same time. For a while, I just sat there. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't call anyone. Because there are moments when you can't outsource what you feel, and this was one of them. I stared at the chair where she'd been sitting, and I realized something brutal. I've been living like the future matters more than the present. But the present is where people decide if you're safe. The present is where love either grows or dies quietly. And I've been letting things die quietly while telling myself I'm just focused. I finally opened the envelope. Her handwriting was neat, calm. Like she didn't write it in rage, she wrote it in acceptance. She wrote about the nights she waited, the messages she didn't send because she didn't want to seem needy, the times she watched me light up for the mission and go dim for the relationship. She wrote, "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real in the moments that count." Then she wrote the line that made my chest cave in. "I kept thinking you'd choose me when it mattered, but it always mattered. That's what I didn't understand." That's when I started crying again. Because she's right. It always mattered. I kept treating love like something that becomes urgent later. Like there's a moment where it finally counts. But it counts the whole time. Every small dismissal, every missed call, every "I'll make it up to you." Those are votes. And I voted against her without realizing it. People think the biggest mistake is betrayal. Sometimes the biggest betrayal is absence. Not being there when you said you would. Not listening when someone was trying to tell you they're breaking. Not noticing that silence isn't peace, it's distance. I picked up my phone after hours. I saw her last message in our thread. It was simple. "I'm home." 2 words, and I never replied. Because something came up. Because I thought she'd understand. Because I thought she'd still be there. I typed a paragraph, deleted it. Typed another, deleted it. Because what do you say when you finally realize you've been the reason someone stopped believing in you? So I sent the smallest truth I could send without performing. "I'm sorry. I see it now." She didn't reply. And that's the part that ruined me. Not because she owes me a reply, but because her silence was the cleanest mirror I've ever had. Silence that said, "I'm not fighting for this anymore." Silence that said, "I already fought. You just didn't notice." Silence that said, "You can't negotiate your way back into a heart you neglected." That night, I did something I never do. I didn't work. I didn't distract myself with tasks. I sat in the discomfort until it taught me what it needed to teach. And it taught me this. I've been using intensity as an excuse to avoid intimacy. I've been using mission as a shield. I've been calling it discipline, but it's also fear. Fear of being needed. Fear of being seen. Fear of having to become a version of myself that can't hide behind output. And the worst part? She wasn't asking me to quit the mission. She was asking me to stop disappearing inside it. There's a difference. You can be driven and still be present. You can have purpose and still have tenderness. You can be ambitious and still answer someone's message when they say, "I'm home." And if you can't, then don't call it love. Call it what it is, convenience. The next morning, I went to her place. Not with flowers, not with a speech, just me, raw, unarmored. She opened the door and her eyes looked tired. Not angry, tired. And tired is what happens when love has been carrying the weight alone. I said, "I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to take responsibility." She looked at me for a long moment, like she was scanning for the old patterns. Then she stepped outside, closed the door behind her, and said, "Okay, speak." So I did. I told her the truth in the only way that mattered. No excuses. I thought I was protecting us by keeping things light, by not letting you see how chaotic my head gets, by not letting you feel the full pressure of my life. But I realize now, I was protecting myself. I didn't want you to see it and leave. So I gave you half-truths, and half-truths are still lies. Her jaw tightened, not in surprise, in confirmation. And I kept going. I don't want to be the kind of man who only becomes real when something dramatic happens. I don't want you to have to become pregnant to finally get my presence. You deserved it before. You deserve it now. And if you still choose to leave, I won't punish you with anger. I'll respect you with honesty. She stared at me like she was trying not to hope. Then she said, "Why now?" That question was everything. Why now? Why do men wake up when the door is closing? Why do we suddenly become poetic when we're losing something? I swallowed and said, because I finally felt the cost in my body, and I realized the mission doesn't mean anything if I can't stay human while I chase it. She looked away, and for the first time I saw tears in her eyes. Not because she was moved by my speech, because she was grieving what she had begged for in silence. She whispered, I didn't want to leave. Then she looked back at me and her voice got steady again. But I can't stay in potential. I need proof. And she was right. Gen Z calls it bare minimum, but it's not minimum. It's the foundation, replying, showing up, listening without fixing, being consistent without being begged. She said, if we do this, I need boundaries. I need you to stop treating me like an accessory to your life. I need you to treat me like I'm part of it. And I nodded, because for once I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to change, not for optics, for integrity. I said, tell me what you need, and I'll do it. Not perfectly, but honestly. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. Then she said, start with this. Don't make me compete with your phone. That was it. Not Mars, not AI, not the future of humanity. A phone. Because that's what love is. Not grand gestures, small priorities. I took my phone out, turned it off, and put it in my pocket. No performance, just action. And in that small moment, I felt something shift. Not a fairy tale, not a guarantee, but a beginning that wasn't built on illusion. I don't know what happens next. Maybe she still leaves. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe we try and it's hard. Maybe it breaks anyway. But here's what's different now. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not bargaining with truth. I'm not waiting for a crisis to become real, because the most painful lesson I learned from the night she walked out is this. Love doesn't end in one big moment. It ends in tiny silences you keep calling normal. And I'm done calling it normal. If she chooses to stay, I'll meet her with consistency. If she chooses to go, I'll let her go with respect. But either way, I won't lose myself in avoidance again. And I won't make someone else pay the price for my fear of being fully present. Because that day, when she said she was pregnant and then walked out, was the day I finally understood something simple. You can build the future and still protect the present. You can chase a mission and still answer, I'm home. You can be Elon Musk to the world and still be a man to the person you claim to love. That's what I'm learning now. Not loudly, not for applause, in the quiet places where truth actually lives. And if there's any real closure in this story, it's not her leaving. It's me finally realizing I don't want to win at everything and lose the one thing that makes winning matter.